Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Guns, Nerds, and Steel. This will be a special video of an experiment that I conducted. It's a question we've all wondered, whether it's day 1 or day 100, of all the skills and perks in the game, and with so many other options to choose from. Is Lucky Looter really worth it? Well, get your nerdy glasses on, because we're gonna test it out. So how does loot work in 7 Days to Die Alpha 19? First, we need to understand gamestage. Gamestage is a calculation that the game does to determine loot, among other things. It's influenced by days alive and XP, or level. Loot is also influenced by tier, and it's broken down into 4 chunks: Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4. Basically, you can think of it like this. You start out with access only to Stone Age gear. As you cross the tier threshold, you'll unlock access to more advanced tech and equipment. So, as an example, you'll never find an M60 in Tier 1, 2, or 3 because it simply won't be unlocked yet. Now that we understand how loot works, let's talk about perks. Lucky Looter. It takes 5 points to get to level 3, but 11 points to get to level 5. The description is pretty clear, plus 5% loot bonus with every point invested. But what exactly does that mean? Higher quantity of loot? More bullets, more gear, more books, more mods? Or is it better quality loot, for example, generally the same items, but just better level? Or what about higher tech loot, like better weapons, armor, and tools, for example, iron tools instead of stone tools? Does it make a difference when I take Lucky Looter? How about early game? Should I put my first 5 skill points into Perception and Lucky Looter to get Lucky Looter level 3? Or mid game, after I've fleshed out some of my combat perks and other important skills? Or do I wait for the late game, once I get into the good stuff? Will Lucky Looter help me max out my toolbar and fill my pockets with dukes? Well, I've set up a rough experiment to see what kind of loot we get with each point in Lucky Looter and at 3 different game stages. Each game stage tested should put us squarely in Tier 2, which we'll call early game, Tier 3, or mid game, and Tier 4, or late game. 6 lanes, 1 for each level of Lucky Looter and 1 control lane. 6 lootable containers of almost every type. I'll collect the loot together and compare it at the end. Here's what we'll examine. Number 1, total value of loot. I'll spawn in Trader Jen once all the looting is done and sell her everything she'll take. Number 2, quality of loot. I'll tally up the numbers of quality 1 items, quality 2 items, and so on, so that we can see if quality improves with successive Lucky Looter levels. Number 3, tech tier of loot. How many low-tech items and higher tech items do we get? For example, stone items versus iron items versus steel items, scrap armor versus iron armor versus steel armor, double barrel shotguns versus pump shotguns versus auto shotguns, and so on. Number 4, does loot bonus affect the amount of mods you get? Number 5, does loot bonus affect the amount of books and schematics you find? Number 6, does game stage affect how good or bad Lucky Looter works? Number 7, finally, I'll give my subjective analysis after 12 hours of playtesting. Here are the conditions. All testing was done at day 1 on a custom map and a custom course. All XP was given to the player with console commands. The perk points are assigned according to the lane being looted prior to that run. Loot containers are opened after taking the corresponding point. Results. This graph shows value over time. To my surprise, total Duke value of all loot from an entire lane did not change significantly for the early or mid-game runs. However, it did make a difference late game. Analysis. Much of the early game loot is simply not sellable, or has an extremely low value. As the game stage increased, higher tech items would appear, but at a very low quality. This higher tech but low quality gear doesn't sell for much, and is often better off being scrapped for parts. When the highest tech loot was unlocked in the late game stage, the biggest modifiable factor then was quality, and therefore value increased dramatically. Quality. This graph shows quality per level of Lucky Looter for each game stage. There was a noticeable increase in quality between level 0 and level 5 of Lucky Looter, but from one point to the next, it was barely detectable. Analysis. Often, instead of getting purely higher quality loot, the game would give you a lower quality item of the next tech tier. For example, a tier 1 steel club instead of a tier 5 baseball bat. This drove the average down. Overall, the quality slowly increased with successive levels of Lucky Looter. Tier. This graph shows the tech tier of loot with each level of Lucky Looter. Analysis. At early game stages, there was a slightly better chance to get higher tech items. At the mid-game stage, there was also a slightly better chance to get higher tech items. At the late game stage, there was a dramatic increase in the chance to get higher tech items. Mods. There is no noticeable increased likelihood of getting mods in loot with each level of Lucky Looter or with game stage. The number was consistent through all testing, and it's hard to assign a value to mods because they all have a particular purpose and their value is subjective. A noticeable exception would be pocket mods. Books and schematics. There was no change in the number of books or schematics with each level of Lucky Looter or with game stage. Books and schematics were obtained at a consistent rate throughout testing. Quality of books is also subjective since every book has standalone value. Game stage. All testing indicated that Lucky Looter had a more profound effect on loot at higher game stage levels. Subjective analysis. I found these results to be very surprising. In my own analysis of the loot obtained, I was underwhelmed at the early and mid-game game stages. In fact, I thought the perk was broken during initial testing because loot difference was almost imperceptible. I found crucibles and mini-bike parts in the Lucky Looter 0 and 1 lane while never finding such items in lanes 4 or 5. I feel like these items are tied more closely to loot tier and thus are sort of black and white, so to speak, and not heavily influenced by game stage and therefore loot bonus. It's important to note that loot bonus effectively works as a multiplier of your game stage. So, for example, at game stage 80, with 3 points into Lucky Looter, you are boosted to game stage 92, which would propel you into the next loot tier and thus unlock new loot. But there are effectively only 2 significant periods in your playthrough that could potentially be influenced by this, crossing from tier 2 to tier 3 and from tier 3 to tier 4. Ammo and food were very consistent through all testing. Looting candy and looting goggles will certainly scale up these results, so make sure to use them to maximize your profits. Since these affect the loot bonus the same way as Lucky Looter, they're best used on loot containers that will land you loot that has a tech tier or quality, i.e. not bookshelves, food boxes, trash cans, bird nests, etc. Here's a good takeaway for you. Eye candy gives loot bonus plus 5, or game stage plus 5, and also plus 10% on top of that. Lucky goggles give you loot bonus plus 3 to 5, depending on their quality. So with a minimal investment of 3 points into Lucky Looter and using Lucky Goggles and Eye Candy, that's plus up to 10 game stage, plus 25% after that. Under these conditions, at game stage 63, you are vaulted to game stage 91 with bonuses, thereby vastly increasing your access to higher tech and higher quality loot. Another bonus that cannot be underestimated is the faster loot bonus. Level 5 allows near instantaneous looting, and it's awesome. Will I take Lucky Looter points going forward? Under certain circumstances, yes. I don't think it's worth it early game, so I won't consider taking a single point in it until at least the game stage 50 to 60 range. In the mid to late game, I certainly would, especially if I'm doing a lot of looting. Remember, 2 points into Perception will unlock level 3 Lucky Looter, so it's easy to get that plus 15% loot bonus. So is Lucky Looter worth it? I questioned my sanity a little bit while looting hundreds upon hundreds of looting containers, chest after chest, box after box. I made so much commotion that even screamers were jealous of all the loot I was getting. But in the end, I'm not here to tell you one way or the other how you should play the game, and no one else should either. The only question you really need to ask yourself is, am I feeling lucky? Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you'd like to see more of my future content. You can check out my Vanguard series right here. Follow me on Twitter for updates and news. Let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions and tell me what your strategy is with the Lucky Looter perks. I'll be back again soon for the next episode, and I hope that you'll join me again. Until then, I wish you all the very best. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.